They say blood is thicker than water, but what happens when the people who share your DNA are strangers, and the strangers who raised you become your entire world? I'm standing in a courtroom where my biological parents are suing me for an inheritance they believe belongs to them by birthright. The irony? They abandoned me when I was 4 months old, and now, 32 years later, they want everything my grandparents left me. This is the story of how I fought not just for money or property, but for the truth about what family really means. The Charleston courthouse feels different when you're the defendant instead of the prosecutor. For 6 years, I've walked these marble hallways building cases against white-collar criminals and financial fraudsters. Today, I'm the one being accused of manipulation and undue influence. The plaintiff's table holds 2 people I barely recognize, a woman with coral lipstick who shares my gray eyes, and a man in an expensive suit who contributed nothing more than genetics to my existence. My attorney, Amelia Hartford, sits beside me with the calm confidence of someone who's argued before the Supreme Court. She came out of retirement for this case, not for the money but because she knew my grandfather. Judge Franklin Cole was her mentor too, and she understood what this lawsuit really meant. It wasn't about assets or estate law. It was about rewriting history, about pretending that absence could somehow equal presence if you hired the right lawyer. The courtroom gallery fills with faces from my past and present. Colleagues from the prosecutor's office occupy 3 rows, a silent show of support that steadies my racing heart. I see neighbors who watched me grow up, people who witnessed every scraped knee, every school achievement, every milestone my biological parents missed. The judge enters, and everyone rises. The Honorable Thomas Avery was my grandfather's protege, which is exactly why the plaintiffs requested him. They assume his connection to grandfather will force him to overcompensate by favoring them. They don't understand that true impartiality was the cornerstone of everything grandfather taught. Richard Dale, the plaintiff's attorney, approaches with theatrical confidence. He paints a picture of a vulnerable elderly man, confused and isolated, falling under the spell of a manipulative granddaughter. According to his narrative, I systematically turned my grandfather against his own daughter, stealing an inheritance that rightfully belonged to her. The words are carefully chosen, designed to portray me as a predator and my biological mother as a victim. I focus on my breathing, a technique grandfather taught me during my first mock trial in high school. The facts will speak louder than fiction. When Amelia stands, her voice carries warmth but her words carry precision. She reminds the court that my grandfather changed his will 10 years ago when his mental faculties were unquestionably sharp. She reminds them that my biological parents abandoned me at 4 months old, leaving me with my grandparents while they pursued lives that didn't include a child. She presents 30 years of documented history, phone logs showing unreturned calls, journals recording broken promises, photographs capturing every milestone with one consistent element: the absence of the people now claiming they deserve his estate. During the lunch recess, I escaped to the courthouse garden where hibiscus flowers bloom against limestone walls. My grandmother planted hibiscus everywhere, in garden beds, in containers, even a small pot on the kitchen windowsill. She would water them and say, "Life still blossoms even after someone leaves," without a hint of bitterness in her voice. She watched her only daughter walk away from her own child and somehow transformed that pain into wisdom instead of anger. Standing there among the crimson blooms, I'm 7 years old again, perched on a kitchen chair helping grandmother measure ingredients for her famous lemon poppy seed cake. Every Saturday morning, the same ritual. She taught me that baking requires precision and patience, just like life. Those mornings weren't about compensating for what I didn't have. They were about celebrating what I did have, 2 people who chose me every single day. When court resumes, something crystallizes inside me. This trial isn't about defending an inheritance. It's about protecting the memory of 2 people who stayed when leaving would have been easier. It's about honoring 3 decades of Sunday dinners, of showing up, of choosing family through action rather than declaration. The afternoon brings witnesses who knew the truth. The court clerk who worked with grandfather for 30 years describes his sharp mind and unwavering ethics until his final days. His primary physician testifies that cognitive tests showed no decline, no confusion, no vulnerability to manipulation. Then Martha Wilson takes the stand, our housekeeper of 25 years, the woman who bandaged my childhood scrapes and taught me to iron grandfather's shirts. Martha's testimony is simple but devastating to the plaintiff's case. She describes how I prepared Sunday dinner with grandfather every single week, even during law school exams, even after I moved to my own apartment. After grandmother died, I never missed a Sunday in 10 years. I'd bring fresh flowers for the table, hibiscus when they were in season, and we'd eat from grandmother's good china while grandfather told stories about cases from decades past. Richard Dale tries to discredit her during cross-examination, suggesting I controlled who had access to grandfather in his final years. Martha doesn't hesitate. Grandfather made his own decisions until the day he passed, she states firmly. The judge denies Dale's motion to strike her testimony, and I see the first cracks in the plaintiff's confident facade. Then Dale introduces a surprise witness, a doctor claiming grandfather showed signs of confusion and vulnerability during his final months. My stomach drops until Amelia rises with that particular calm that precedes destruction. Through methodical questioning, she reveals that this doctor saw grandfather only twice, that he wasn't the primary physician, and that he opened his practice in partnership with my mother's cousin. The conflict of interest hangs in the air like smoke. Amelia produces grandfather's complete medical records from his actual longtime physician. The cognitive assessment performed 1 week after the surprise doctor's visits shows sharp mental function, excellent recall, and no evidence of impairment whatsoever. The doctor's testimony crumbles, and with it, a significant pillar of the plaintiff's case. When the Charleston Post and Courier runs a feature story, my mother's face stares from below the fold. She describes being systematically alienated from her father's affection, weeping about calculated efforts to turn him against her. There's no mention of the 4-month-old baby she abandoned, no acknowledgement of 32 years of documented absence. My phone fills with angry messages from strangers, convinced by her performance. The prosecuting attorney who manipulated her elderly grandfather. The ungrateful daughter denying her parents their rightful inheritance. The words burrow under my skin, but I stand at the window of what used to be grandfather's study and remember grandmother's voice. Stand tall, Mackenzie, like my hibiscus flowers. The strongest blooms emerge from the coldest winters. I find her gardening journal on the shelf, and there in the margins beside a sketch of crimson blooms, she'd written my name along with a lesson about surviving winter when everything appears dead. My biological mother takes the stand with practiced tears and carefully chosen words. She testifies about abandonment and alienation, about being shut out of her daughter's life by manipulative grandparents. Amelia's cross-examination is surgical. She presents visitation logs showing my mother visited 10 times in 15 years. She displays emails requesting money for Manhattan apartments and Aspen vacation homes. She shows a handwritten note from grandfather. Broken promises again. Mackenzie waited by the window until midnight. How do I explain this time? The courtroom shifts like an ocean current changing direction. My biological father's testimony reveals he doesn't know where I live, can't name my closest friends, and doesn't remember attending any of my graduations. When asked which law school I attended, he guesses incorrectly. The man suing me for my grandfather's estate can't recall a single significant fact about my life. Then comes the document that changes everything, a letter grandfather wrote 1 week before he died, found in his desk and admitted into evidence despite Dale's objections. Amelia reads it aloud. Mackenzie, you inherit not because of blood, but because you stayed. When Sunday dinners became difficult for me after June passed, you never missed one. When law school demanded your weekends, you studied at my kitchen table. When Celeste and Gavin asked for money, which exceeded $845,000 over 22 years, they never once asked about you. The words settle across the courtroom like snow, quiet and undeniable. Grandfather's voice echoes from beyond the grave, speaking truth that no amount of legal maneuvering can obscure. Family isn't defined by biology but by presence, by choosing to stay when leaving is easier, by showing up for Sunday dinners and ordinary days when showing up is all that matters. Judge Avery's expression remains unreadable as he processes the letter, but I notice him remove his glasses and polish them slowly, the same gesture grandfather made when a case's truth became undeniable. The afternoon proceedings bring more evidence of my grandparents' deliberate, thoughtful decisions. Bank statements showing $845,000 sent to my biological parents over 22 years, each check representing another broken promise, another missed visit, another choice to prioritize their lifestyle over their child. My biological mother corners me during a brief recess outside the third-floor bathroom. The hallway stretches empty between us, and her Chanel perfume creates an invisible barrier. Her voice lacks the courtroom warmth when she speaks. We should talk about this division. You might have the law on your side, but I have your blood. The word hangs between us like an accusation. She suggests splitting the inheritance 50-50, calling it fair, invoking my grandmother's name as if casual use of it grants her authority. She mentions the pastor at Trinity Church, the community gossip, the Cole family reputation. Blood matters in this town, she says with certainty. It always has. I study her face, my eyes reflected in hers, the same shape and color, but lacking something essential. I think about Pastor Roberts, who actually called me with genuine concern after watching me sit beside grandfather in the fourth pew every Easter Sunday for 3 decades while my parents remained phantom figures. I think about grandmother's gentle hands teaching me to transplant hibiscus shoots, her voice saying, "Life still blossoms even after someone leaves." When my mother walks away, I stand before the bathroom mirror and see not just her features, but grandmother's strength, grandfather's integrity, and something they cultivated through thousands of ordinary moments that built a foundation stronger than genetics. The final day of trial brings closing arguments. Richard Dale appeals to tradition and blood relations, suggesting that legal documents shouldn't override natural family bonds. He invokes Charleston's old guard values, speaking about mothers seeking reconciliation and the sanctity of parent-child relationships. His performance is polished, emotional, designed to tug at heartstrings rather than address facts. Amelia rises with only a single sheet of paper. Her closing argument is brief, but devastating. She reads portions of grandfather's final letter again, letting his words speak for themselves. Evidence, not emotion, should govern this court's decision, she states. The evidence shows decades of financial support alongside consistent absence. It shows Franklin Cole's mental acuity confirmed by medical records until his final days. And it shows a lifetime of Sundays when Mackenzie Wright chose to stay while her parents chose to leave. She looks directly at my biological parents. What kind of parents sue their own child after abandoning her? What kind of mother invokes family unity after 3 decades of documented absence? Judge Avery removes his glasses again, and the courtroom falls silent. Having reviewed all evidence and testimony presented in this case, I find the will of the Honorable Franklin Cole to be valid and executed with sound mind and full legal capacity. He looks directly at my biological parents. The plaintiff's claim is dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, the plaintiffs shall pay the defendant's reasonable attorney fees for bringing a frivolous lawsuit without substantial justification. The gavel strikes with finality, echoing across the courtroom like thunder. The tears that fall aren't about victory or vindication in the legal sense. They're about something deeper, the recognition that family is defined not by DNA, but by who walks toward you when others walk away. My biological parents leave quickly through the side door. No final words, no acknowledgement, just departure. The one consistent action they've demonstrated throughout my life. The courtroom empties slowly, and I remain seated, watching sunlight filter through tall windows onto the now-empty plaintiff's table. That evening, I drive to Magnolia Cemetery as sunset turns the weathered tombstones golden. I kneel between 2 graves, placing fresh hibiscus blossoms against pale marble. I kept my promise, I whisper to grandmother's headstone, laying a slice of lemon poppy seed cake wrapped in wax paper beside the flowers. I protected what you built. The wind rustles through the live oaks overhead, and a cardinal lands on a nearby branch, brilliant red against the darkening sky. Grandmother used to say that when cardinals visit, someone you love is checking on you. 1 year later, I stand in my own courtroom chambers. The nameplate reads, "The Honorable Mackenzie Wright," in polished brass, South Carolina's youngest state judge. The appointment felt like grandfather's final gift, though I earned it through my own work and reputation. His legal volumes line one wall of my office, his penciled notes still marking important passages. I run my fingers across their worn spines each morning, touchstones of continuity and wisdom. Today I'm presiding over another inheritance dispute, another family torn apart by competing claims of who deserves what. A daughter claims her mother favored a grandchild unfairly, and I see echoes of my own story played out with different actors. I watch the women avoid eye contact across my courtroom, the same cold gulf I once faced. When I speak, I hear grandfather's measured cadence in my own voice. Children don't remember what we say. They remember who showed up. Martha still refuses to retire, insisting the house needs people who remember. She maintains grandmother's garden with religious devotion, and every Saturday a lemon poppy seed cake appears on my counter, baked from June's exact recipe. Some traditions shouldn't end just because the people who started them are gone. I no longer waste energy wondering if my biological mother will call on my birthday. That space once reserved for parental approval has been filled with something sturdier, a chosen family of colleagues, friends, and neighbors who gather around my table each Sunday, continuing grandfather's dinner tradition. My phone buzzes with Martha's weekly text, "Hibiscus blooming like crazy. Bring home cuttings." I smile, remembering grandmother's hands showing me how to transplant shoots, how to nurture new growth from established roots. That's what legacy really means, not property or possessions, but lessons that bloom across generations. In every fair ruling I issue, every child I protect, every truth I honor from the bench, their legacy continues. I return to Magnolia Cemetery often, bringing fresh hibiscus and slices of cake. Kneeling between the graves of two people who chose me every day for 32 years, I finally understand that gratitude outweighs grief. They gave me something my biological parents never could, the knowledge that family is built through presence, through showing up on ordinary days when showing up is all that matters, through choosing love as an action rather than an obligation. The cardinal visits again, perched on grandfather's headstone, and I remember his final words to me during our last Sunday dinner. "Integrity isn't what you claim, Mackenzie. It's what you demonstrate." I've spent my life demonstrating what they taught me, and I'll spend the rest of it teaching others. Because some lessons are too important to die with those who first spoke them. Some truths need to bloom again and again, like hibiscus flowers returning each spring, proving that life continues, love endures, and family, real family, is defined by who stays. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear that family isn't always about blood. It's about presence, loyalty, and choosing each other every single day. Your support means everything to this channel. Hit that like button if you believe in the power of chosen family, subscribe so you never miss stories that matter, and drop a comment telling me about the people who stayed in your life when leaving would have been easier. Those are the stories worth celebrating. Those are the people worth honoring. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for understanding that sometimes the family we choose matters more than the family we're born into. See you in the next one.